So today we're looking at learning styles. We're not all born equal. Diversity is what makes us individuals. There's no one right way to learn for everybody. There's not one size fits all. We all have preferences and strengths for learning, strengths and potentially weaknesses. What we normally, or the most simplified way of categorizing them, are into the following learning styles. First is oral, so speaking and listening. Second is visual, reading and writing. And three is kinesthetic, doing. So auditory orientated learners respond well to the spoken word, lectures, audio tapes, discussion, and sound effects. I always like this saying that we have two ears and one mouth, so we should listen twice as much as we speak. But if this might not be your favorite way of learning, it might not be through speaking and listening, but reading and writing. So visually orientated learners respond well to the written word, diagrams, pictures, videos, wall charts, and posters. Interestingly, our brains process images 60,000 times faster than words. So an image can help create understanding. And kinesthetically orientated learners respond well to movement, hands-on activities, designing and creating activities, and role play and drama. So get hands-on, get out of the classroom if you can, take it away from the traditional learning environment, and make the class more about doing things. Now, these lectures that I'm providing to you I'm trying to combine them with the visual aspect, which are the slides. You also have the oral aspect of hearing me talk, and I would hope that if you do all the worksheets and the tasks, then in effect you're creating, you're doing the work, you are physically writing down notes. Those are ways that can help you learning. So logical, there are two reasoning types. One is deductive, so that's going from context to rules. So for the English learning, this would be looking at a paragraph and then saying, well, how do we use the present simple? How is it being used, and how is the present simple formulated? That's one way of doing it. The other way is inductive, so you would have the rules of grammar shown, presented to the class, and then the students themselves would create the context from the rules. But we're going to look at that later on in lesson planning. Environmental as well, so you have interpersonal environments, so that's solitary, people prefer to work on their own, and interpersonal, so in social environments. So solitary might mean they prefer to work in a small group or one-on-one with the teacher. Social, they might appreciate having their colleagues and other people around in order to help them. Really depends on the type of person. So you can see it as someone who is extroverted and someone who is introverted. No, they kind of have different ways of learning, different preferences at least. So Gardner was a psychologist, and he put it down into 7 intelligences, which we're going to look over in more detail. It has been said that everyone is born with 6 intelligences or talents. 2 appear naturally, 2 are brought out by teachers, and 2 remain undiscovered until death, which perhaps is a sad thought. But the point here, I think, is that we need to make our students and even ourselves aware of our own strengths and our own intelligences or talents. So Gardner had 7, logic and math smart. So a fascination with numbers, patterns and logical problems. Well, we're going to look at this in a bit more detail in the next slides anyway, so I'll just go around them, and I put it all in one slide so you can copy paste it like this. But logic and math smart, space and vision smart, body smart, music smart, people smart, cell smart, and word smart. So these are actually the more informal ways of calling it. He used more technical terms, which we'll look at in a second. In some traditional schools, kids who don't perform in verbal or logical intelligence are labelled as failures. So that is the preference for Western cultures, is to focus on verbal or logical intelligence, and the other intelligences don't seem to be as valued in our school system, or in those school systems. The traditional thinking is James is so bright, he reads and writes so well, but Tess is a superb drawer, but she's not very bright. So this is implying that because she's not good at reading and writing, that makes her unintelligent, which is a kind of a fixed mindset. And it's undervaluing the importance of design, really, and someone who draws well. So traditional testing is really for those verbal and logical skills, which is not necessarily fair. So Gardner's view says, all 7 areas are equally valued and should be called intelligences. Intelligence is the capacity to solve problems in everyday lives. And different cultures value different intelligences, like we said, with the Western world essentially focusing on maths and science and pushing those intelligences through school, while generally denying the importance of having arts and culture. So verbal linguistic, which is the correct word for word smart or word intelligence, is the facility for word and language in speaking, reading and writing. So the strengths with someone who's got high verbal linguistic intelligence would be reading, writing, speaking, debating, poetry, and perhaps doing word puzzles, playing Scrabble and that kind of thing. Bodily kinesthetic is the high control over physical motion, adept with hands, and enjoys active involvement. So strengths would be playing sport, miming, acting, making, and fixing things. Intrapersonal, so self-smart, is the ability to be reflective and intuitive, have self-knowledge and reflection. So strengths would be self-awareness, self-understanding, goal setting, self-discipline, reflection, identifying strengths and weaknesses. So logical, mathematical, the capacity for inductive or deductive thinking and use of numbers. So strengths being they can solve maths problems, calculating, predicting, reasoning, researching, experimenting, analyzing, hypothesizing, ordering and seeing trends. Musical, rhythmic, the ability to recognize tonal patterns, sensitivity to rhythm and beats. So their strengths may be sensitivity to pitch, timing and rhythm, memorizing songs, playing a musical instrument, and creating sound effects. Visual spatial is the ability to visualize objects in spatial dimensions and create internal images inside your mind. Strengths may be creating artwork, drawing, painting, creating mental pictures, mapping, making diagrams, solving mazes, designing diagrams, photography, navigation, drawing plans, and graphing. And interpersonal, so people smart, strong social skills and relationships, a sensitive listener. Strengths being understanding human behavior and motivation, interacting socially, cooperation, leadership, organizing and managing others, negotiation, mediation, empathy, and sensitivity to others. So, people, person. So, students' needs and the 7 intelligences. No matter what intelligence your students possess as a strength, if you are mixing these intelligences in your classroom, so not just doing verbal work and speaking and debating, and not just doing essays, but actually involving some theatre or creating a poster or doing a visual piece or making a song, that's going to create a more cohesive classroom where the students feel more included. If they're having more fun, then they're going to be better behaved as well. And of course, if they're doing different kind of activities and tasks based on different intelligences, well, they should also have greater enjoyment out of it. It's going to be more dynamic, more enjoyable. Also, their need is covered for the sense of purpose. So by using other activities which are not just written and spoken, it helps to see relevance in life. They're learning how their learning can actually be adapted or used in real day-to-day life. Acknowledging what has been learned for the future, so they realize that what they're learning can actually benefit them in the future. Whereas if you think back at school and you're learning physics and chemistry and you're going, why, what's this really going to ever help with? So a sense of purpose, is developing your strengths as well. So you realize that, okay, I'm good at this and we're practicing this, so I'm getting better at it. Sense of freedom. So when you give them different choices of tasks as well, then you give a sense of responsibility. You're also allowing the adaptability of tasks to the students' needs. So they're getting a sense of freedom about what activities they're doing. Maybe you can set a task and say you can either do it this one or you can do it this way. Either make a play out of it, or you can make a poster out of it, or you could essentially split tasks up. You need a researcher, you need a writer, you need a reporter, and you're allowing your students to decide based on their own strengths where they should be assigned to within the project or task or whatever you're doing. And self-esteem is really important as well for their needs as students. So the fact that you're, as a teacher, valuing different strengths, saying it's not just about how you read and how you write, it's also about how you act and how you visualize concepts, how you work together, or how you can work on your own. And when you're practicing those skills, you're giving your students more confidence. So you've also got Bloom's levels of thinking, which we'll look at more as well, I suppose, at planning and looking at different tasks a little bit later. But the first thing is knowledge, so remembering the information that the student, what they're doing is the first point. Second thing is comprehension, so then after they've remembered it, then they can understand it, interpret it. Then application, they can apply what they've remembered and what they've understood into giving examples, giving details. 4, they can then analyze the information, so things such as advantages and disadvantages. They can compare and contrast. They can show facts or opinion and cause and effect. So there's the analysis stage. Finally, so 1 to 4 need to go in order. You can't analyze the information if you haven't remembered it or understood it. 5 and 6 kind of equally at the same time. Synthesizing information, and that would be thinking about alternative ways of doing things, and evaluation, which is critical thinking, which is the ability to judge whether the information that you've got or that they've got is valid, is trustworthy. So they're thinking more in depth about the information they've actually been given. So a little bit more about that later in lesson planning and looking at different types of activities. So we get on to the eclectic approach, using multiple learning styles. Traditional schools have this one-way-fits-all teaching which favours those who learn logically and linguistically. They label those students as smart but ignore the students who learn by doing. They rely a lot on course books and classrooms to deliver learning. We believe that each learner has a unique blend of intelligences. Some are natural and others are developed. Intelligence is a multiple phenomenon. The world can be interpreted in different ways. Teachers can play a significant part in the development of intelligences with creative tasks that remove barriers. Assessments should take into account the diversity of intelligences, help learners to understand their own abilities. Try to spread your teaching style to adapt to their learning style, your students. Get out of the classroom when you can and use fun and activities and do things in class like projects. So a lot of, probably a big complaint that we get with teachers sometimes at the schools is that their teachers aren't dynamic enough. They're just a bit boring, a bit same, and that's probably because they're only relying on the course books to deliver the material, or just one way. When really you got to mix it up. If you mix up the different intelligences, you're going to have a much more fun and engaging classroom. So what are your own strengths and weaknesses? I've attached the Mika test for you to find out. It's really worth you knowing your own strengths and weaknesses, and then you can apply the same learning for your students, to help them understand themselves better. So to review, we process information differently from others. Okay, it's not one way of doing things. We will learn more effectively if knowledge and tasks are presented according to our preference. We will be better learners and teachers if we are aware of our strengths and weaknesses. Some cultures promote different intelligences more than others. Using different intelligences in the classroom make the activities more engaging, creative and fun. And written examinations may not be the best way to assess students. It's the most convenient way just to print off a worksheet and have people to write down the answers, but you're ignoring people who would be better off maybe presenting their information through more meaningful tasks to them, such as creating a play or something similar. So, learning styles, level up. Gardner's 7 intelligences. Check them out. Find out your own strengths and weaknesses, or your strengths mainly. Which talents are you most strong at, and figure out like how to make your classrooms meet those different intelligences and not be too traditional and just follow that logical and linguistic model, because it's just not the society. We don't live in a society where we all learn the same way. We are different. We're all different, and that makes us unique, and that actually has helped us to create the world that we live in today, because we can all bring a certain perspective to a problem.